I'm just gonna straight up say it. Some of you need to just get on with it and hire a mix engineer, or a mastering engineer, or a co-producer, or an arranger. I actually recently started working with someone who they're just a professionally trained, classically trained pianist. So they can basically take my basic ideas, my MIDI ideas, and do different things with them that I don't know how to do. And, I'm learning from them as a result of employing them. But basically, they're helping me take my patterns, and even though it's the same chords and still kept in the same keys, there's things like inversions and just the rhythm of the chords that are played that is very helpful. So, it really is a give and take. I don't always know. I mean, I do suggest it sometimes about the whole ghost production thing, because, if you have the idea but you're paying someone to turn the knobs in the studio, that's really no different than a rock band. When I was a singer and a guitarist in a local rock band in Pittsburgh, when we recorded our EP and some of the singles that we did, I wasn't the one who engineered it, I was one of the producers of it, because I sat at the board and gave the guy who was turning the knobs and knew how to work all the things suggestions on what I wanted it to sound like or what I wanted it to do. I can even remember saying, like, hey, there's this sound that this guy does with his vocals on this record. Can you listen to it and tell me how he does that and do that to my vocals on this song? And he would. So ghost production and all of that, I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. And even if you disagree, it doesn't really matter, because, the industry's doing it at scale big time. So, but, it may not be a bad idea to look at your weaknesses, and while you're weak at them and building them through my content, hire somebody to do it now. Being weak at mixing or whatever, arranging, producing, having the right samples, having a powerful enough computer to do all of this in the first place, it's not really a big deal. Just go get help, because it's going to take you time to develop it anyways. So even though you're developing it like right now, like let's just stick with the mixing thing, it's still going to take time. And, learning the skills over the course of a month or 6, it's still going to take another 6 months to maybe even 6 years, depending on what you've got going on in your life, to really get those skills down to a point where you're confident and there's not much that's going to knock you off your game. It's taken me about 10 years to get there. And but not everybody's in a position to spend money like that and like pay a mix engineer. But then the other thing is, like, can you afford not to? Like, maybe you should just get a second job temporarily and then have the means to pay a mix engineer. You're giving up some money, but you're buying a ton of time. And that's something to consider, because, I don't know, sometimes I think, like, the more you sit in a studio, sometimes the worse things can get. So, sometimes it's really not a bad idea just to bite the bullet and pay whatever it'll be, $200 or something, and have somebody mix your stuff, or less, or maybe more. But, have somebody else mix it and get it going. So, yeah, some of you guys need mix engineers, some of you guys need help with arrangement, some of you guys are like me, like you're a producer, but you're not much of a piano player or into theory. So I basically, whatever you want to say, export that work out to other people, and then they come back to me with it. So think of yourself as sort of the head producer, but it's okay to have a team underneath you. And I'm not even going to say if you can afford it, find a way to afford it. Or, even better, if you're seeing this and you're young enough, become a classically trained pianist so that you can learn about arrangement, let that lead you into producing, and then now you're a pianist that knows about arrangement, and you've gotten into production in the past 3 years. You've had a chance to study mixing and mastering, and, basically you're good, and you really, you didn't do that and grow old doing it. You're just starting your life, you're just moving out of your house and stuff and doing that. So it just depends on where you're at in your life. But it's probably not a bad idea to think about exporting some of that work out, so that way you're not having these dreams of being a traveling DJ, but you know, you're also a graphic designer because you handle your own branding, and you also are a mix engineer, but you're not that great of one, so no one's signing your tracks because you can't hear your own shortcomings at times. And I think that's probably the biggest thing about this, whether it be with a logo or producing. You know, you have shortcomings just like I do, just like everybody does, and the sooner you can recognize them and start to work on them, but also fix that problem through basically, you know, paying somebody who's better than you to help you with your productions, the better off you'll be. And then eventually, as you get better, you don't have to pay that person anymore, because you'll be good enough to do it yourself. But to linger in sort of limbo for 5 years because you're not that great of a mix engineer, yet you also refuse to get a second job so that you can pay a mix engineer to just get your damn tracks out. Well, had you just sprung for a mix engineer 5 years ago, that one track that ended up being mediocre could have been the track that was mixed wonderfully and got signed and got you introduced to other people and got you on your way. But because you didn't want to spend the money, everything sort of came out for the past 5 years as mediocre, and no one really wanted to touch the project. And as a result, you know, you're still working at a local place rather than, you know, lightly touring. So something to think about, guys.